Welcome to Military Brats Podcast.
We're your host. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Jeweliana.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm so good. How about yourself?
I'm doing so good. I am so glad we're finally doing this. We've been talking about this for a year and a half now?
Yeah, it's been in the works for quite some time, and I just cannot wait to dive deeper into what we want to do with this podcast and why we kind of brought it to light. But I do, however, want to touch base on our name. Why did we even come up with that name, Chloe?
For me personally, I think we were just writing down a lot of different options, and I think the one that resonated with us the most was Military Brats. Just because I think it really relates to us, and for those listening who don't know, Military Brats is the name you're kind of labeled with if you're a child of someone in the military. I just think Military Brats just really made sense for us. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I also feel like it kind of had a negative connotation. I don't know if that was just like me personally, but I always felt like whenever somebody would say, I'd be like, no, like I'm not a military brat. Like I'm just a military kid. So I feel like I feel like we're kind of taking the name and wanting to turn it into something positive because, we're not all military brats. We're not even brats. Like we're just military kids. And so I think just having that playful name and kind of owning it, I think is really powerful.
No, I agree. And I think we really wanted to create this platform to create a safe space for dependents, spouses, and active duty service members to listen to relatable and resourceful content. Not only that, not just people affiliated with the military, but people who have no idea what the military life is like. You know what I mean? For me personally, coming to college in Fresno, there's not really any bases near me, so I think there was a lot of stigmas and stereotypes whenever I would bring up being a part of the military lifestyle, I guess. So I just really bringing an awareness to that.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I also think it's especially important for those people who aren't in the military because maybe they have friends that have been in the military or friends that grew up with like military parents, or even they might have a partner or a spouse that's in the military or has been in the military. So kind of just bringing awareness to the impacts of it in like your future life and things like that, because I know for sure I've been impacted by it. Like even to this very day, I'm like, oh, every 3 to 4 years I'm ready to move, and that's something that I kind of got to get used to. Like that's not really normal, and not that many people do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, let's dive into growing up in the military. What was that like for you? How did your parents meet?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Chloe. It's a little confusing. So my biological dad, Eric, he and my mom met in their young 20s. And my mom had my older sister when she was about 21 years old. And then I came 2 years later. So when my mom was around 23 years old, which is just really young. And I kind of feel like that happens a lot in the military. A lot of military people get married, especially young. But like a few years later, so they got divorced when I was pretty young too. I think I was maybe 4 or 5 years old. And so once they got divorced, me, my mom, and my sister had moved to San Diego. And that's when she met my stepdad. So my stepdad, Brian, and my mom met in high school. They actually went to high school together. So I think they kind of rekindled that friendship. And then that's kind of how it took off into a relationship. And so once they were, together and everything, we had moved to South Carolina where he was stationed. He was stationed in Beaufort, South Carolina at Parris Island. And I did really like living in South Carolina. I do have really like strong core memories, but also I did have those hardships as any kid does, with any childhood.
Because how old were you when you guys moved out there to South Carolina?
I think I was about 7 years old. I think I was going into the second grade. Yeah. So I was still pretty young.
Yeah, and then when did Brian and Michelle end up getting married?
I believe in 2010. So when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And then from then, they had my little brother who is 10 years younger than me. So I'm 22 years old right now, and he's 12 years old.
Yeah.
And that was another hard transition
Yeah,
for
no,
me too.
that's a
Like,
very big age gap. Was that hard going from the baby of the family to being a middle child?
oh yeah, it was definitely hard too. Um, yeah, I think it was just a hard transition for me because I was already like pretty spoiled and I was already kind of a brat, I will say. And so kind of just like having like another sibling come about was really hard because I was already on my own, or well, not on my own because I had my older sister, but I was already used to being like the baby of the family up until I was about 10 years old. So that definitely was a hard transition for me. Mhm.
After South Carolina, where was Brian stationed next?
He was actually stationed in Camp Pendleton in Oceanside, California. Um, and so me and my sister, the whole family just moved over there. And that was probably my favorite place to be stationed at. I was there from sixth till ninth grade and I loved it. I did not want to move at all. So when the next duty station, came up, I was kind of like, do we have to? Like,
Like, are you sure? Can you ask your command?
oh, literally. Like, I was like, this is like the best place ever. Like, I'm right by the beach. I'm just now getting into high school. My high school was like a mile away from the beach. I was like, this place is amazing. Like, this is where it's all at.
Yeah, no, for sure. I feel like that had to have been a big transition, especially like going to high school. What was that last station?
Yeah, so I was last stationed at 29 Palms, and that is exactly where we met. And I would love to dive into that right now, but I kind of want to hear more about your story, Chloe. Tell me about your childhood and how it was growing up in the military.
From what I can remember, it was Travis Air Force Base. My mom will correct me if I'm wrong. Before that, my mom and my dad, Stephen and Brandy, they did meet in the military. They both had the same MOS. My mom and my dad are both in the Marine Corps. So they were together for a few years. They had me at 20, and then a year and a half, they had my little brother, Jordan. And unfortunately, they ended up getting a divorce. But like we said, I think that's just very common in the military world because you do get
Mm-hmm.
so young. But it kind of all worked out. A few years later, my mom, she remarried my stepdad, Michael. They
Mm-hmm.
met at their duty station in Camp Pendleton.
So, what did you think of Camp Pendleton? Because I loved it when I was there, but we were both at very different ages. So, what did you think of it?
Camp Pendleton was definitely my favorite base as well. I lived there when I was a little bit younger, and I want to say it was probably like first grade, second grade, and then I ended up graduating from a school out there too. So I kind of felt
Oh,
like it was
wow.
very full circle for me. I kind of started my own
Mm-hmm.
journey and ended it in Camp Pendleton. And I know you and me have both mentioned this before. We would love to get back to SoCal, but if anyone
Mm-hmm.
knows, it is so expensive. So I don't even know how we'd afford it.
Yeah. I know it really is crazy how expensive it is. And it's also, I don't know, I really want to do thank the military for putting me on that base because that's literally where it all started. And that's like kind of where I fell in love with Southern California. So after Camp Pendleton, where did you go next?
Um, After Camp Pendleton, my stepdad was stationed to Washington, and we lived there for the next 3 years, so 2009 to maybe 2012. And at this period, they had my little brother Michael, and then a few years later, they had my siblings Max and Mia. Um,
Oh wow.
yeah,
So you're kind of part of like a big family. How is that?
it's really good. I'm actually the oldest of seven. Like I said, my mom and my dad did get divorced. So my mom and my stepdad, they have three together, and then my dad and stepmom, they have two together. So I have a very, very large family.
But that has to be kind of fun though, like having so many siblings.
Yeah, no, it's definitely amazing. I mean, the age gap is unreal. I am
Mhm.
21, and my youngest sibling, she is three. So
Oh wow.
yeah, it is a very big, big age gap. So it's a very big adjustment for me. Um,
Mhm.
but I love them all.
Oh yeah. Well,
um,
tell me kind of more about living in Washington. What was that like for you? What school did you go to, if you even remember? I know you're still pretty young at that age, but tell me
if
more.
you're a military kid, you definitely understand. Like you are just moving back and forth, state to state, and it does get very
Mhm.
confusing. And I think this probably you can relate to this too, Juliana. Like a lot of your like our childhood kind of just like mushes together, and
Yeah.
that's why I think it's so hard for us to talk about because it's almost just like, is this what happened or is this what happened? And I
Mhm.
feel like I'm always telling like details that I think are they're not right. I don't think most of my details are right because just it's not something I remember.
Yeah, and I do kind of want to touch on that. I just feel like it was very a very skewed perspective, right? I mean, you're totally right. I do feel like my childhood was pretty mushy and it like kind of all blended together because when you're so young, you don't really have that great concept of time.
No,
So I feel like it's really hard putting the puzzle pieces together, and you're right, sometimes our information may not be right. But
no, exactly.
I think it's still important to kind of talk about it cuz that's kind of how we see it and that was our perspective on it too.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, for me, for example, after Washington, I went to North Carolina for a few years and then back to Washington for my freshman year of high school. And then after that, I went to 29 Palms and was there for 2 years. And then after that, I like
mhm.
got in trouble.
Oh yeah.
After that, I got in trouble and I had to live with my dad my senior year of high school. So I was just bouncing around. If that doesn't tell you it's mushy, I don't know what does. For me, I had 3 high schools alone. So
Mhm.
I think that says a lot. But what about
Yeah.
you? We never asked you that question. Where all have you lived?
Where all have I lived? Oh my goodness. I mean, just like what you said, it's so back and forth in a lot of things. Like, I was born in Washington, and then when my mom and my biological dad were together, um, we lived in Texas, and then I moved to San Diego, and then from San Diego, I moved to South Carolina. From South Carolina, I moved to Washington for like less than 6 months. From Washington, I went to Camp Pendleton. From Camp Pendleton, I went to 29 Palms. From 29 Palms, I went back to Camp Pendleton. So, exactly like what you're saying, it is like so back and forth and just like kind of all over the map.
It's not just like a single line for us. It is literally
Yeah.
a zigzag. It is the craziest thing. Um,
Hmm.
but with that being said, you have like a little brief understanding of where we came from and how we got to 29 Palms. And now we want to talk about how we met in our story.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, when I moved to 29 Palms, I was coming from Oceanside, California, and I've already stated that's like my favorite place in the world. So that was such a hard transition for me. I just remembered like my family, just driving straight to the desert, and I was kind of like shocked. I was like, where are we? What is this place? There's nothing around me. The closest Walmart is 30 minutes away. Like, what am I going to do here? This place sucks. Like, I'm never going to enjoy my time here. And with that being said, I do feel like the first day of school was such a nerve wracking day for me,
Yeah,
as it always is, but also starting in the middle
of high
of
school.
like your high school. Yeah,
Well,
that's really hard.
I think that was definitely harder, probably for both of us, just because I think it's a little bit easier to join school in like middle school, elementary school, because everyone is a little bit nicer. But in high school, I think everyone's a little bit more mean, and I think that it was very intimidating, in my
Oh,
opinion.
yeah.
It was
No, I totally agree with
a
you.
huge transition for me. Also, not only that, 29 Palms was a very, very small school, but me and Juliana both came from schools that were thousands of people. 29 Palms
Mm-hmm.
had less than 1,000, right?
29 Palms, yeah, let me look it up. 775
Yeah, see,
students.
there you have it. But that's not exactly how we met. It was
Yeah.
set the scene. First day, both
Set
for
the
both of
scene.
us. 10th grade.
Sixth period, Mrs. Vaudell's class. Shout out Mrs. Vaudell.
I was trying
Like,
to say we were like
hmm
on the very far, the far right side, far right, far left.
yeah,
That was where we were at,
I agree.
and
I agree.
I didn't know Juliana. She didn't know me. It was the last period of the day. I feel like I was already had a lot of nerves personally. I don't know how you felt, um, but I just looked back at the end of class and I was just like, I really like your outfit. Let's be
Hmm.
friends.
I think that's what you kind of have to do, right? When you're a new student. And I feel like we're kind of used to like having to put ourselves out there because we are constantly moving and we are constantly, meeting new people, going to new places. So for me, that was like really enlightening for me because it was like I'm not the one doing it for the first time. Somebody else is approaching me and being like, "Hey, I want to be your friend." So I really loved that, and I think we hit it off like ever since
No,
that day.
we've been inseparable ever since. Our parents would have to agree. We'll have to have one and tell you all about that time period. Me and Juliana got in trouble a lot. We did a lot of things together. We weren't the best kids, as they would say.
So we were partners in crime pretty much, and I feel like you and I both really planned out our lives together. I mean, we were in high school. We knew that at some point we were both going to be going to college. So I feel like we kind of really held on to that and was like, we planned everything out. We're going to be going to the same exact college. We're going to be roommates. We had this huge plan and this huge idea. But is that how it happened?
We had like a giant dream board, and to this day, I think there's a part of me that wishes it did, but everything happens for a reason. To answer your question, Juliana, it definitely didn't go that way. Like I said, guys, I did get in trouble my senior year and had to move to my dad's. And I think at that point, we kind of just went our own separate ways, and we never really talked to each other more about what we were going to do and until
Yeah.
graduation. And it was more like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going here. What are you doing? I'm going to a whole new state. I just
Mm-hmm.
went to a school in Northern California. Juliana was like, I'm out. I'm going to
I
Washington.
At that point, I was pretty much fed up with my parents, and I was like, I am ready to get the heck out of here, and I'm leaving. I know you guys aren't really planning to go to Washington, so you'll find me there. Like, I was like, that's where I'll be.
But that didn't really stop us. So I came to Fresno State. She went to Western, up in Washington. And we kind of just both did our own things in college too for the first 2 years. And I think that was very
Mm-hmm.
healthy for our friendship. We both kind of didn't talk to each other. And I don't think that was bad. I just think we both really wanted to experience college in our own way.
I totally agree. I think it was very beneficial for the both of us that we could kind of figure out how we fit in to this new school. And also, at that age, it's such a growing and kind of like trial and error type of age. So I do feel like us kind of focusing on ourselves and our lives, like our individual lives at that time, was very healthy for the both of us. And I think it also really impacted our friendship now.
I definitely want to say it created a very good foundation because we have spent majority of our friendship long distance, so we have learned how to communicate and make each other a priority in our relationship. So will visit her and she'll come visit me,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
I feel like we really tried our best to show up for each other. Honestly, it's kind of like even though we are in different places, we can still like come together and still show up for each other, have those deep conversations, and still be there for each other while not actually physically being in the same place.
Yeah, no, I agree. But that didn't stop us, folks. There was definitely a time, sophomore year, where I was like,
Mm-hmm.
Juliana, I need to be near you. I need to move there. I got that military itch.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I applied, I got in. I was so close to doing it. And I think
Yeah.
I just woke up and I was like, actually, I don't want to go.
Yeah. And I think that was like totally okay because even now, sometimes I definitely regret my decision moving up here. I really do wish I just stayed in Southern California. But I met such amazing people here. I mean, I've met my long term boyfriend. I have some really great friends and a good support system up here too. But I do wish Chloe was with me because that would have just made everything so much better.
One day, I mean, from me staying in Fresno, I ended up meeting my long term boyfriend. And like we said, I think everything does happen for a reason. You can't rush it. So it did work
Hmm.
out. Me and Juliana will be back together, hopefully sooner than
Soon.
later.
Mm-hmm. Oh, don't worry, you guys. It is in the works.
It is in the
We will
works.
make it happen.
Oh my god, if you guys can't tell, we're like soulmates, but don't tell our boyfriends.
Yeah, they might get jealous, or they may already be jealous. Okay. So, what did you think of Fresno State? Like, what kind of came out of that?
Yeah. I actually did really like Fresno State. I do want to put it out there that me and Juliana were in college for 2 years during the pandemic, so I definitely think that had a very big role in our college experience. Not for the
Mm-hmm.
best. But I did have a good experience in college. I met a lot of great people. I met my boyfriend. Um, what came out of it, though, I did graduate 4 years on time with a bachelor's degree in public relations and advertising. And right after I graduated, I did get a job as a business development coordinator at a global engineering company. So that's what I'm doing right now. Just trying to navigate that whole
Woohoo!
world. I know. Whoop, whoop. But what about you, Juliana? Like, what came from Western? What's going on?
What is going on? Well, I am still in college. I did not meet my 4 year thing, but that's okay because it's happening soon. I'll be graduating pretty soon, at the end or kind of like in the beginning of December. I should be
No, but like, don't
graduating.
say 4 years because you're getting she's getting her credential. For those who don't know, I think you graduate 4 years in certain states. Your credential is like an extra year after you graduate. She is getting her
Yeah.
credential prior to walking, so she is basically like a certified teacher the moment she walks. So I would
Yeah.
say
So
you basically are doing it on time.
thank you. Thank you. I do have to remind myself of that sometimes because my program is just a quarter longer. So what I'm doing in college is I kind of always knew that I wanted to be a teacher. I've always said that when you move so much, education is probably the one consistent thing you have. You will always have school, you will always have, all of that in that school community. So I kind of feel like that's where my passion for teaching came from. And I knew that Western was a pretty good teaching school. It's very reputable for educators. And so I am a special education and an elementary education teacher. Right now, I am actually in my second internship. So I had to do two internships. My first one was my special education one, and this one is my elementary education one. And that is what I'm completing right now. And as soon as that's done, I will be graduating.
Oh my god, that is so exciting, guys! I can't tell you how excited I am to go and support this girl this year. I
Yeah,
can't.
and I that is just one big thing that Chloe and I are both like so great at is just being there for each other and supporting each other. Like when Chloe graduated, you better believe I was there. I was there for her. I was at her graduation and I even cried. Like, and I'm not a big
She did.
well, sometimes I'm a big crier, but usually I don't cry like that, like over something like that. But I was just overwhelmed with like proudness and just like such great feelings of accomplishment just
Yeah.
for Chloe. And I cried.
Oh, don't make me cry right now. We are
I
very,
know.
very close, and we really celebrate each other's wins like they're our own. And I think
Mhm.
that's what's really important to us.
We just wanted to thank you guys for listening to our story and getting to know us, as well as why we wanted to create this podcast.
Yeah, we again are so excited that we started this journey and that you are coming along with us. If you have any ideas, questions, or stories that you want us to share, please DM us at Military Brats Podcast with your inquiries. Thank you.